Welcome to Tawana Talks, where I give my reflections on simple life experiences that lend themselves to life
Hey,
lessons.
welcome to Tawana Talks. So, have you well, let's stop for a second. Let's take it back to when you were a child and you were in grammar school. Well, I call it grammar school. That's the grades K through 8. But I guess now in different spaces and places, it's elementary, middle. So you got K through 5 or K through 6, depending on where you are, and then through 8, whatever. That's not even the gist of the talk. But think back when you were in grades, let's say kindergarten through third, maybe even fourth, let's say fourth. Um, and you got to be the line leader. Man, that was like the job, aside from the paper passer outer, if that was even a job. You got to pass out the papers. Um, yeah, that was top job. But of the top 5 jobs in being in elementary school and grammar school was line leader. That probably was number one. When you got to be the line leader, it was like, yes, I am the leader. It's me. Follow me. You got to be able to when the teacher said, take us to the next door, you got to walk and you held that position with pride, right? You were the line leader. Like um one of my relatives used to tell the younger children when another child was born and they were older, now the older cousin or the older sibling, she would say, oh, you are the boss of them. And then the kids would take that um, literally, like I'm the boss of them. Um, and so my child in particular, my youngest child, she was like, boss means that I am in control. They have to listen to me, everything I say do. So I had to kind of reel that in some and said, hey, let me explain to you what being the boss of someone is. It is not you get to tell them what to do. It is not that they have to listen to everything you say. It is not you are in control and in charge of everything that this person does. So she got her leadership training early. Being the boss of someone means that you, number one, have to be the boss of yourself. So you have to be operating in integrity. You have to be doing the things that are right and lead worthy. So therefore, you can then lead the other younger cousins or family members to do the right thing. That is what being the boss of someone means, that you are doing what is correct. So therefore, they are following you, and you can be able to say, "Hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. You should be doing this," and you're teaching them the right things to do. So, going back to being the line leader, like you were the boss of your class because you got to lead them to the place in the space that your teacher was telling you to take them. Now, let's think back for a second. If you were the second person in line, that was a pretty important job. Anywhere in the line where you had someone behind you, that means you were leading the people behind you. So it's like almost an order of operation. You had the leader, and then you had the next leader, and the next leader. And so in those spaces, you were secure in that space too, because you wasn't letting nobody skip you. Like no skipping, no skipping. And the line leader was like, move back. I'm the line leader. So that was the space. Nobody was in front of them. But if you were a person where somebody was behind you, you were making sure they knew not to skip. Like, no, move back, skip. No skipping, no skipping, no skipping. And so you secured in your space. Um, think about the person who was in the back of the line. Like, did that person want to be in the back of the line? Or like what did that feel like? Like, as the person in the back of the line. I think as a teacher, I never taught elementary school, or at least not in the space. I did some elementary school counseling, but I never taught where I had to line kids up in that space. I'm trying to think in my time, did I have situations? What I would do, I think I've had some situations, but in my mind, I think what I've done and what I've probably seen other educators doing, and by mind, keep in mind, this is not a technique or a tool that was taught to us in teacher school. We didn't get any training on these are the things that you do to help empower your students. Um, like make them a line leader. But what is taught is like giving jobs and tasks to help them operate in the community. And so line leader was like, ooh, that's the crown of the day. But the person in the back of the line to empower that student, what I think I would do is that person would be responsible for maybe carrying the thing that was needed for where we're going. So giving them a job value, knowing that, if we're going to recess, then, you and the person in front of you can carry the jump ropes because you knew that that was what was needed. um, or having them when we get to the place, you get to tell the teacher or do this thing, take attendance when you got there, so they knew that their job was just as important, or making sure that if you're the person in the back of the line, you are to make sure that our line stays straight. So that's your job, and so their job also was a leader to make sure that we're walking orderly and things of that nature. But that's not even the gist of this talk. So funny story about line leader. um, so my daughter is currently, when you hear this, is in the fourth grade, and so her class does walk in a line, which helped me to remember that fourth grade is a time you walk in a line. So her class does walk in a line, and I was having a conference with her teacher, and her teacher was sharing with me that she came up to her and she said, "We should do the line like this," whatever that was. And the teacher said, we have a way of doing the line, and we're going to stick to that. But if you would like to be the line leader, then you know the process you have to do to be the line leader." I'm laughing because of what my daughter's response was. She was like, "Oh no, I don't want to be the line leader. I just want to tell you how the line should be." That is funny to me, because what I hear her saying is, "Oh, I don't want to work for it. I want to own it. I don't want to work in it. I want to own it." Not no, not so much work in it or work for it. That's probably not the right words for it. It's almost like, I remember um, being involved in something. I was somewhere with some students when I was principal, and one young man um, was learning about systems. A football system was like some football players and things of that nature were some guest speakers, and he had some questions about it. But I remember he said, they asked, "Do you want to be a football player?" Because he was asking some techniques and some things on operating the team and quarterback plays and all the things that I can remember. And when they asked him, um, they were trying to tell him how to be on the team, and, "Do you want to be on a football team?" And his response was, "Oh, no, I don't want to be on the team. I want to own the team." And so that's what I heard my daughter saying. "No, I don't want to be the line leader. I don't want to be in the line. I want to own the system. I want to operate the system. That's going to be mine." And what I hear is her natural tendencies of being a leader, and how she has high aspirations mentally for herself, of her organizational skills and her leadership skills are at the level that she's looking to operate in her life. But the level that she's been gifted with, that's not something that she just decided. All right, she doesn't have strategic planning meetings on Saturdays where she's sitting down saying, "Okay, this is how I'm going to organize." These are things that just come natural to her. So what I want to talk about today is giving you permission to be you. So in my organization, I have this motto. First off, my organization is, I work with parents in building and parental bonds and relationships, and empowering children with ADHD. And so in the organization, I have this motto, where I say "Be you," and that "Be you" is an acronym for building, engaging, and understanding. And so building, with being able to develop relationships, doing the things to develop relationships. Engaging, meaning that being present in the moment, having that conscious conversations and intentional interactions. And then, and you understanding. And so as you're doing all those things, you're developing a level of understanding of who the person is that you're interacting with. And then there's another portion of it, but it's like, "Meh, be you." And the "meh" is another acronym for mindset, ego, and habits. And so with that, it's more so of creating a mindset, or changing a mindset, if you will. We do things one way. And so now we're looking at, how do we change our mindset? And then E is for ego, where you are removing your ego. In order to understand someone else and build a relationship, we have to set aside our ego to do that, because it's not always about us. Sometimes we have to focus on the other. And then the H is habits. And so that's developing new habits. For me, my phrase is a habit becomes a way of life. And so when you're doing things continuously, then that becomes a habit. And so I'm looking to develop new habits um, of building relationships and also understanding and empowering children with ADHD, but supporting those parents and nurturing the parents in that. And so, digressing a little bit to that, but moving back to um, permission to be you. When I think about my daughter operating in her natural state and just being her, I think about um, as a child, you have that childlike faith, you have that childlike innocence where you are just doing what comes natural. And as parents, as well as educators, it's our job to not only observe with our eyes, but listen with our eyes for what our children are saying and what they're doing. And because they'll show us who they are by what they do. And some, it's not so much of who you are, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But it's who they are, like what their natural inclinations are: leadership, singers, actors, dancers, moving. All of those things are going to show up in their natural inclination. I was listening to a podcast, and the gentleman on the podcast had said, we tell children that they can be anything in this world except them. You can be anything except yourself. And we don't physically say those words, but when we operate where a child is doing something that is natural to them, excuse me, um, sometimes we tell them to stop. Now, there's some times where a child is doing something that this is not the time, this is not the place. But sometimes a child is doing something where we can, um, um, what's the word I'm looking for? We can conform the environment to the child to make it the time and the place, to conform the environment to allow the child to show up as who they are. You've probably heard me say this on several talks, that we've moved into a space where we are trying to conform the child to the environment, or conform the people to the environment. And sometimes we have to move past that and conform the environment to the person. And more specifically, in talking about conforming the environment to the child. And so, just thinking back on my experience when I was in the classroom as a teacher, um, oftentimes I would have students who are tapping and students who are moving and students who are singing and those different types of things. And I moved towards that because that's just the experience. But then you had students who you would see with their face in a book. They love to read. Students who exert themselves in leadership positions or leadership qualities, those types of things. And so, having all of that going on, then it was my job to captivate and nurture some of those things so that that can help them to be comfortable with being who they are and operating in those spaces. And so, when I think about classroom, now let me just be honest and admit, because if I have any students that are listening to this, I want to make sure that they back me up on this, and I want to make sure that I am not fibbing when I say this. Tapping was not my jam. No, absolutely not. When students were in the classroom and they were tapping those pencils, tapping those pens, that drove me bananas. Like, I'm like, oh my God, the tapping. And I literally would take the pen and toss it across the room. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I didn't do it in a violent way. And any student that's listening would laugh and say, yep, she sure did do that. And I would give them something else to write with. And I would say, I just wish that when you're 199 and your grandkids come to visit, they're going to be tapping on the table. I did say that. And maybe that wasn't nice, but I did give them 199 years. But as I have progressed through my career in education and now have learned more of neurodivergent brains, and more specifically ADHD, and understanding those behaviors. And I'll get back to talking about permission to be you, but I think this falls in line with it. Um, just a little tidbit, I've learned that the tapping is called stimming, and that tapping behavior um, gives the child who is neurodivergent brain in some cases the environment or the movement helps to stimulate their brain and stimming and helps them to think. So, what seems to be distracting to me is actually not distracting to them. This sitting quiet and not moving is very distracting to them because it allows for their brain to start to think of other things and it's not distracting to me. And so, going back to my point about conforming the children to the environment, I was guilty of that. And so, by having that child stop tapping, because it aggravated me and possibly others, I was forcing that child to conform to the environment around them as opposed to trying to shift that environment for that student. Moving forward, some things, it's not the noise that was stimulating to that student. They can care less about the noise, although it was very distracting to others. It was more of the movement. And so thinking now, being able to provide that student with something to tap on, like a small pillow or a small something that didn't have sound because it was the sound that was distracting to me and not the noise, not the movement. And so if I could provide an environment where let that student tap and eliminate the sound, now I've changed the environment to conform to the people who were in it as opposed to doing vice versa, which was damaging to one person or another. And to their learning and who they're supposed to be, but then recognizing that that person may have been, musically inclined. And the students who are in the back humming and singing, again, same things. And so, because music is also a big part of who I am, I was the rapping science teacher. Yes, I was the rapping science teacher. Shout outs to T Dubs, which was my classroom rap name. A lot of students still call me T Dubs, TDUBBS. You can look it up. Got a lot of hot hits out there. Looking for some royalty. No, just joking. But you can look it up. You'll find it out there. I'm not ashamed of that. But I captivated on that. I recognized that a lot of my students were into hip hop culture and pop culture. And so then I said, okay, what is it that I can do to use that to bring it into the classroom to be able to engage with the students and have some fun with it. And so I would take lyrics to popular songs that they were currently listening to, and then I would shift those lyrics. And I was doing this way back before it was a big, big thing, way back in 2009, 2010, maybe even 2008 as well. But way back and remaking songs, the Puff Daddy remix, but it was the T Dubs remix, and just remaking songs that helped them to learn the content. So I would insert the content information that made it catchy so they can download it so they can listen to it. But then I started incorporating students. One of my students taught me how to YouTube. And so she gave me tutorials. I allowed her to teach me. That was her natural capacity. One, showing up in the space in the digital social media spaces, and she was a leader in that space. And so, captivating on her leadership, empowering her to teach and train me to do something where I can, show up in my space in other ways for my students. And so, I was very grateful and thankful for her for teaching and showing me how to do that. Um, and then allowing students to then participate in the songs. And so some of them would help write some of the lyrics. Some of them I would ask them like, how would this go? What does this sound like? Some of them we created a video together where the students were able to bring in themselves. They did snippets of the song and created their own pieces in video. I would do things where students can, display their understanding of knowledge as poems, display their understanding of knowledge as a written piece, because that's something that they were good at, acting it out. All of those things allowed that student to be them. Some were directors, some were organizers. They showed up in their space as being the leader. And so just getting back to the point of, permission to be you. When we recognize someone's natural tendencies, there's natural inclinations, that is who they innately are, because that comes natural to them. We didn't create ourselves. And so the things that are in us that we naturally do, that is who we are. And so having the permission to be that person, I feel that I am a natural teacher. Like it just comes natural to me for the most part. Even when I do these talks, I know what my title is. I know what my gist of the conversation is going to be because that comes to me in just everyday interactions. Like I mentioned, the talks are my everyday experiences or my life experiences that I have been able to use as a reflection for growth and development, personal as well as leadership, as just life development. But my natural inclination is a teacher. That's who I am. And so that's why I feel who I've been placed on this earth to be. And so being able, excuse me, to deliver this information or deliver information to others based on my knowledge and expertise, or how my knowledge, some of my knowledge and expertise is how I deliver information and how I'm able to teach that information because I'm a teacher. That's not something I even went to school to be trained for. I was teaching before I even had the training. And I can take it way back to grammar school. Like I was the one who was excited about um, taking home handouts, like we called them diddles. So when the teachers had diddles at the end of the year that they were getting rid of, I was like, "Oh, I'll take them home." Teacher manuals and books that they were no longer using, "Oh, I'll take them home." I just take home. I used to take home all of my books at the end of the day or the weekend. And I would set up school for my stuffed animals. And my mom could attest to this, and a couple of her friends who babysat me after school. And I would set up school and teach those stuffed animals. I didn't know I was writing lesson plans and doing all those things. And I didn't realize that that's what I was going to become. But again, that was my innate thing. Like that is, if I went back to third grade and an assignment we had, I never forget. The assignment was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a teacher. Well, look, I did have other careers along the way that, through life experiences and life journeys where I felt like that's what I wanted to do and that's what I wanted to be because the money called or this was enticing or that was enticing. But it led back to teaching. Even when I was in corporate, I was teaching in corporate, doing training and things of that nature. But just getting back to even being a child, I remember my friends would say, let's play. And I'm like, oh, let's play school. And they're like, nobody wants to play school. And I'm like, why? I do. It's fun. Why don't you want to play school? Like, I didn't understand that. That now I see, like, okay, I get it. But also I wanted to be the teacher. I wanted to be the leader. Like I was a leader as well, when as in who I naturally gravitated to being. That's who I was naturally. And so being able to engage and understand individuals for who they are so that they can be able to have permission to be themselves and show up in those spaces and allowing them to show up in their space, but also recognizing and realizing, and for children, helping to nurture that. They don't know who they are and what they're going to be. They're still exploring. And sometimes that exploration is shifted because of what we feel they should be and who they are. But again, getting to that mindset, ego, and habits. Um, shift your mindset. You don't have to tell your children and teachers, you don't have to tell your students what they should and who they should be. It's important to expose them to a variety of, occupations and opportunities so that they can be able to um, show up in their natural capacity in those spaces. So shifting the mindset of saying you got to do this and you're going to do this, that's a mindset shift. Removing your ego, not thinking, and I had to explore this, not thinking that it's all about you. Like it's not all about you. Who your children are going to be, they have to live their lives. It's your job as teachers, it's your job as parents to support and guide and provide um, experiences and exposure to information, and then nurture who they are. Recognize when they're doing something, like when my daughter says, I don't want to be the line leader. I want to show you the process. I want to, organize that. Then I am now listening and hearing, you are a great leader. You have leadership tendencies. Let me give you tasks. Let's talk about things that you can do to help cultivate that leadership. And then I'm also implementing things in our daily life that helps to cultivate that leadership when it comes to, our meal planning and things of that nature. I have in mind what my budget has and have in mind what things that I have in the refrigerator that I'm going to cook. But I may lay out three options and say, hey, what should we eat today? What, use your discretion or whatever. And she'll pick. And that's still her operating her leadership because now she's picking the meal based on the choices that I've given her. So, not saying go free reins, you still need some guidance when you are nurturing and supporting children and young adults. When you're talking about your teenagers, remember, I was a high school principal for some time. And so, being able to provide that support to young adults as they are venturing into the real world, and then developing new habits, having a consistency, changing habits that you had before that we have to do it this way. Well, again, that comes with the mindset shift, and then being able to develop new habits. So again, I hope this was helpful, but this does give you permission to be you as you give others permission to be them. Remember to hear not just with your ears, but also with your eyes, and then be you, build, engage, understand. Do that by shifting your mindset, removing your ego, and developing new habits. Thanks.